thank you. I've never really tried this way. Yeah. So if I will take these off, I will probably hear myself, and then I can move on freely. So first, I'm really honored to be here with you today. First, can you hear me, please? Yes. Good, thank you. And second, I'm also humbled, by say such a distinguished people in front of me talking about the school that I acquired much of my kind of wisdom about the population health approach during my master's at Harvard School of Public Health 12 years ago. The story I'm trying to tell you today really starts from the fact that I believe we all share the understanding that being alive is the most valuable thing about what we have. And second, being alive is just a little bit more valuable than actually being healthy. Enjoying, well, for instance, opportunity to be here, having the opportunity to support our close friends, our family, and also contribute in our personal, professional ambitions, but also to the society. Now, we know that health is a very data-intensive area. We heard that already, which also means that if health is so valuable to us, so is also our health data, and more so even if we want to have this data to be available and support us in our planning for the future, but also acting in the future. Now, when it comes to data, we in Estonia really like that. We have built for last now, I would say, 19-20 years, truly digital society. And by society, we mean that first, each and every citizen needs to have access to this society, which is built on digital flow of work processes, your activities. But secondly, it makes your life very convenient. So the second point here, telling that we all have digital ID, just means that, like, I do have my name in an analog world, in Aaviksoo, if you approach me, you know me, but also in the digital world, I have my digital ID. So whenever I engage into transactions, I introduce myself using this digital ID. Now, what does it help me with? Well, as a civil servant, all Estonian citizens can assume that I follow my duties wherever I am. So I can sign the documents, I can participate in decision-making processes, and that makes a country very efficient. As a mom having a vacation in Dubai here or in Bali, if we want to apply for child benefit, I can do that right from the shore. Or if there is any engagement with my municipality, I can do that regardless where I am. So altogether, 2% of GDP is saved just by this digital signing. Actually, when I worked for the government, there were certain moments when I had to sign papers. That was when I went to the Brussels and I had to submit my reimbursement forms. So we still need a lot of work to do in Europe as well. But other than that, for last, I would say, 7 years, I've never really signed any documents on paper. Now, if you have this kind of very flexible and smooth society, it also means that you can start building your services online, and gradually it started from reporting taxes. Then the banks made a very convenient transfer and managing your financial assets. You end up by today with a notion that there are still a few things you can't do digitally. We call them high-risk activities. Why is marrying, divorcing, and selling your real estate a high-risk activity? Well, there are consequences, probably lifetime consequences for you. And so we don't want these decisions to be made foolishly or under coercion. So yes, indeed, there has to be someone next to you, a third party, to verifying that these decisions are made on a voluntary basis and in a way that you are really happy with them. But other than that, everything, yes, really can be done digitally. And when digital signature saves the country 2%, Altogether, there is an estimate that 7% of Estonian GDP is saved every year because we have moved digitally with our services. Now, that is definitely one of the reasons why Estonia has become successful not only in digital domain, but also one of the most successful countries when it comes to coming out of the Soviet system and globally as well. Now, so you understand we do things digitally, almost everything. All the assets and transactions and processes are digital. Of course, you have started to think about the risks. There is no such thing as a riskless society. So, well, we actually were made aware of that in 2007 in a very straightforward way when the first state-sponsored cyber attack attacked Estonia. It lasted about a week. At that time, we had already many of those wonderful digital services, banking, reporting your taxes, talking with the local municipality. And suddenly, for about a week, you couldn't use those services. Many would say that, well, this is now the alarm bell that you should maybe stop innovating, which is not the case in Estonia. We usually try to make the good crisis to work for us to find the solutions. And that was what the government's next step was. Okay, so we have now everything digital. People love it. Government is efficient. Businesses can make more business than they could ever do in a country with 1.4 million people. So help us now solve the problem that you can prove the time, integrity and origin and the provenance of any data assets, human or machine produced and processed, without reliance to centralized trust authorities, because they can be compromised in the future. So if I have this house of mine, or I have those agreements with the government about my family relationship, or what kind of tax I have reported, and in 10 years' time, I need to kind of engage in a next activity based on that information, which does not exist anymore on paper, which is only available in digital domain. So that was a tough question, and at that time, yes, the mathematicians have been working on a blockchain already since the 90s. There have been rumors that even Bitcoin was invented actually in Estonia. That is not entirely true, but true is that those engineers behind this were working in Japan at the time when some of the first academic work that now we know is part of the Bitcoin arise. And the solution that Estonian government started to implement is a private permission blockchain which solves just this specific problem of provenance and specific problem of immutability of your data. So you can take any data asset. You can start with PDF file, or it can be an MRI scan, and you run a specific algorithm on that, and this algorithm gives a hash, and this hash is then signed into the blockchain, and the receipt is given back to anyone who has the data set. So anytime that government database or an individual with a mobile phone or whoever who has signed the data with that presents it to any other party, this other party can verify the original authenticity of that data without relying on that individual or the government or actually any business entity. So you can verify your data assets, and those assets can be anything. They can be also, somebody asked about through AI, it can be traces of software program. It can be your firmware that is running on a mobile phone if you do the update. So you can basically have this single version of truth, and then you can start engaging into activities. Now coming back to healthcare. So health is valuable, health data is very valuable if everything is digital, and yes, in Estonia it is digital. Already since 2007 we started, but it's kind of fully blossomed in 2012. We do have digital prescriptions. Family doctors can know what has happened to me the day before in a hospital, and vice versa. And this is open to private, this is open to public entities, so that infrastructure and the framework is not bound to sectors. You can start building various workflows around that. Now, of course, since 2012, the production of this blockchain, which supported at that time the major registries and databases in the Ministry of Justice and a few other, was also deployed in healthcare. And again, I think that was mentioned here already several times, that you should start practically from small things. So the first thing is that, okay, you want to make certain that all your medical records are as they are, so that if doctor has signed your summary record and this is presented to another doctor, you as a patient can be certain, but also that other doctor can be certain where this data came from. Second, me as a citizen, I want transparency. I want all logs when somebody has amended or changed or improved. Well, the diagnosis can change over time, or if someone has accessed the data. So this full 100% of transparency is another feature that you can put on top of that. So effectively in Estonia, somebody described it very nicely, each citizen is policing over everyone in the system how the data is being processed. So it doesn't mean that, you know, every time I get 100 requests, can I process your data? There are certain processes that have been agreed by default by the government, or in some cases, yes indeed, I have given my informed consent. Then again, all the time, I can go back to my patient portal and I see who, when, for what reasons has accessed my data. And I can put a request if I either don't like or I can't remember why this transaction happened. And yes, in the first years, we had situations whereby doctors and nurses were accessing data that they didn't have rights to. And many of them lost their job or were pressed also on criminal charges, and they lost their license. Today, everyone has learned to live in this kind of environment, and well, this is only a start of new business opportunities that you can build for that. So here's my dream. So if you have this single version of truth, so that all the original files, everyone knows that they are there, they can't be changed. So it doesn't mean that you pile data into one place, it doesn't even have to be a cloud, and then start giving access to individuals into that cloud. No, the data resides where it is. You can do computing mostly in the places where the data resides, and then present outcome, usually aggregated reports of the outcomes. It can be a supply chain whereby wholesalers have their view on the system, but then the pharmaceutical company in one end and the hospital in another end has view that they are entitled to see. By real-time healthcare, I mean that, again, the stakeholders that are involved, and very often they operate as an independent agents. So again, we want them to innovate. We want each of them to put forward kind of value-adding service to that patient, but yet again, exchange just small part of that information with the others. Again, you can build this kind of new workflows without the need of bringing everyone in a centralized way. Data-driven personalized medicine, zero bureaucracy. Again, we run our public health screening programs in such a way that you send out the invitation to citizens from the system automatically, and then people can they go and visit those services if and when they like. Then again, you can put automatic controls who has been rendered those services, and if not, then you can bring this up in a delicate manner. Or if people have switched them off for whatever reason from these kind of services, again, you can address only those individuals who feel comfortable with this one. And in Estonia, we have at every given point of time approximately 0.6% of people who have opted out from sharing their medical data across the system. We monitored that, and we found out that it's not always the same people. So every now and then, somebody either switches the doctor and then tries to see whether their trust relationship emerges, or then for some other reasons, maybe some new service will be rolled out and they first want to see how safe it is. For instance, now we have 20% of Estonian population who have their genome genotyped, and linking that genome information with the health information to get personalized advice. Again, not everybody might feel happy with that. And we are fine with that. Again, we have the infrastructure and we have opportunities to develop from that. So I would finish with, let's say, some take-home messages. Again, learning from some of my peers, and I believe many of you know John Halamka, you shouldn't use blockchain as a hammer looking for a nail. There are things that blockchain is good. So if you want to know if something really happened as a proof of work, yes, you can use blockchain to verify at that moment this activity by this individual, produce this data, and this action happened. Second, if then the data is being captured during that process, again, you can verify that at that moment this data was really the one that it is, and increasingly so in a machine-to-machine world. As an example, in Estonia, 30% of the data that travels in our healthcare system is already machine-to-machine. So there is no possible to build workflows where human beings are controlling who and for what purposes is using that data. So we need that integrity guarantee to be automated and processed in that way. And then you can start building what is the kind of holy grail to save healthcare systems from the sustainability challenge, is the support outcome-based payment, which usually happen over time. It also spatially distributed, so different stakeholders participate in the system, which means that upfront it is currently easier to just measure the inputs and then assume that they are implemented in the right way. But if you really want to pay for those activities that deliver value, you need to be able to work in this trusted ecosystem for everyone. So, last but not least, we don't do everything with blockchain in Estonia, don't get me wrong. So we had our identity management, we have our secure transport layer, and then we added in 2012 the blockchain in order to help to solve with this integrity issues. So wherever and whenever and for whatever reason you are trying to solve your problems, please try first to identify what is the business problem, what is the technology stack you need, and then what we say, if you can't implement your blockchain project and demonstrate your C-suite in 12 weeks, it is probably either wrong business problem or wrong technology or both. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Yes.
Right here in front of you, Abdullah.
Oh.
I'm waving. I'm waving at you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you very much for your talk. I was just interested. I was trying to find online what you do in terms of the node holders, because when you have a blockchain network and you want to distribute it, there's some people which look at blockchain in a very religious fashion, and they think the whole network should be on a public network. The problem with this that I find is when you try explaining to an individual your HIV status is on this person's laptop and your cancer result is on this person's laptop, it doesn't work. So is your network considered public or private? And if it is, who are the node holders involved in this?
Yeah. So yes, it is a private permission blockchain. And for the very reason that you just said, I don't want, and I don't think you all want, your health data to be put into blockchain so that you can't get it out from there. So that's the first thing, that the data resides where it is. Now, the node holders are many. So since we are only putting the hashes into the blockchain, so there are actually, and I would bring my CTO on the stage to explain, or we can exchange some cards and let him explain. But we have separately consensus building nodes, and then the ones which are operational, and they are currently running in about 130 different countries. So that you can be certain that your data is safe with you, but also all the stakeholders that you are engaging in business relationship with can be certain that your data presented to them is valid as it is.
Thank you very much.
and until we get to the question, so we have built integrations with the distributed ledgers, so Ethereum, Bitcoin, and many others. So there are use cases whereby certain smart contracts and certain activities actually make sense to be on the public ledger. So, or then if you want to kind of operate between different distributed ledgers. So again, we provide this underpinning solution which helps you to actually stay with the technology stack that you have and then add this trust layer to all your engagements.
Hello, yes, my name is Usama Hassan from Dubai Health Authority. So there are two issues within the healthcare domain that makes applying blockchain very difficult. The first one is the nature of the data itself in healthcare is amenable to change. So even if I give you a dose for a medication, you go to the pharmacy, maybe he will do a calibration because of something, your weight or whatever. Data normally changes easily. So this is against the blockchain mutability concept. This is one thing. The second thing, within the hospital domain, normally data within the health records are open to doctors. You only want to show the necessity of accessing data, but it's not a purely role-based access. It's not like in the banking system where I am an accountant of those 100 records, I can access them, I can't access anything else. It's totally different. So how can we go about these two issues?
Okay, the first one, again, you don't put health data in the blockchain because exactly the nature of being dynamic of health data just is against the main principle. So what you put then on the blockchain is the verification that at this moment of the time, when doctor prescribed this drug, the decision of the doctor based on the information that he used was the one that is presented now in digital form to the pharmacy. Now, if in the pharmacy, the pharmacist and the patient will decide that actually they will switch the drug because of, actually in case of Estonia, we have the mandate, the pharmacist to introduce if there are cheaper alternatives. So if that is then, again, this decision is being made, so you have provenance of the decision-making process, but then the pharmacist will keep their data and doctor will keep their data, and then you can link them for either for auditing purposes or aggregate it for certain reporting purposes. Now the second problem is more challenging. The solution we have chosen also was done because it's cheap and it's scalable. So the KSI blockchain solution we use in Estonia is capable of signing hundreds of millions of transactions per second. So you can also build kind of logical and smart triggers into your process, and then you can start applying what we heard, certain even simpler AI solutions, or at least some free agents, and that is what is being done in Estonia. That, for instance, if a doctor starts accessing medical files above certain limit, say for instance more than 15 medical records in 5 minutes time, the system stops the process because there is no way the doctor can actually in a meaningful way engage with 50 patients at that time. So that you can automate those processes, and you don't lose the flexibility. And believe me, coming from a country where the principle of GDPR have been implemented since 2001, and building this kind of flexible digital society, which does not go into any conflict with the privacy regulations, this is how you kind of release the power of the technology, that you have the capacity, and then you start gradually taking more and more risks. And then remember, one of the kind of balancing part of that is this transparency. So if doctors are doing inside a hospital when I was unconscious and they are accessing my files, and maybe the doctor on duty just came from the street because the doctor that was supposed to take care of me and which I had consented can't perform the duties. Later on, I can go back and verify that there was a reasonable justification for this to happen inside a hospital. And it is in blockchain, which means that all the transactions are logged in that way.
My question is usually Windows system, iOS, Android, they develop very nice software, but later they continue to upgrade and update, right? So I don't know, in Estonia, is there any chance to upgrade and update your system because of new clinics and new practice? So my question is, your system is flexible to upgrade to new functions?
Honest answer is, I really hope so. I can tell that we have 200 plus people, and out of which 80% are basically working on a research. So we are updating, and currently we can tell that our solutions are quantum proof. Well, maybe in 5 years' time, someone will discover something that we need to update that. So that's another thing, and I believe that if you remember the 3 last blocks on the slide, in our company, but that is the culture in Estonia, you build the technology into kind of in a stack, which means that you can replace components of that without the rest of your technology stack to be compromised. And also when it comes to providing, the specific service on a blockchain, it should be invisible. Actually, with our current clients, sometimes the problem is that they tell, what does the system do? They can't see it doing anything because it is invisible apart from either, and then we started to provide them regular reporting because it's only for auditing purposes, for outside auditors. Then you feel comfortable, but you still quite can't touch it. So that, yes, we are upgrading that. Currently, we haven't seen problems neither in the government as Estonia, the Netherlands, the US government Department of Defense is using that, the government in China is using that. So far it has proven to be robust. But of course, we don't know all the future. There was one question over there, and my clock tells I have 1 minute, so.
Hi, my name is Mariam. You said that you in your country you developed your own. Is it? Is everyone? Yeah, you develop your own blockchain. So because of virus hack or something like that. So previously you were dealing with another providers before you do your own blockchain.
No. Well, if you recall those dates. So the attack was in 2007, and the first Bitcoin was coined, I believe, in 2009. Actually, our kind of test solution started in 2008, so it preceded all the other blockchain solutions. So that we didn't replace it for anything else. We just started, and it works. And it works since 2012, 24/7, 365 days per day, without a second of malfunction so far.
Previously, you were dealing with which company before you?
We didn't have a solution for the integrity.
Yeah, okay.
That was the challenge that the government was facing. We had digitally advanced society, but we were vulnerable.
Yeah.
Now we are protected. Yeah. I can't hear you.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is about the confidentiality of the healthcare data on the blockchain. Okay. So if in a permission network, the nodes agree to give another node the permission to read the data, right? Mostly the public blockchains, they prevent the modification of the data on the blockchain, but the readership is actually open to everybody, right? So in the permission network, in the private network, how do you arrive at the consensus on giving the readership to the nodes? And how do you ensure that that readership is not being fraudulently being delegated to somebody else?
Okay. Again, since there is no data, health data in the blockchain, only information about the hash, which is one-way cryptographic proof about any data asset. So you cannot calculate back from the hash the original information. So for that purpose, there is no compromise in the real data. Now, you're right about there are the permissioned blockchain also means that the stakeholders participating in the system are known. Because if you think of Bitcoin, at least to my understanding and personal understanding, one of the key reasons to have Bitcoin is the wish to be anonymous, right? And then you need a huge computing power to avoid anonymous people doing bad things in a system where nobody knows each other. In healthcare, and very often in public sector, you actually don't need those stakeholders to be anonymous. Actually, in most cases, you don't want them to be anonymous. So if you take away this anonymity request, then you are operating in a space where stakeholders know each other, and immediately, within a second, if somebody starts cheating in the system, you raise the flag on that. So again, I can bring you the core team of 30 engineers to explain how the separate network of consensus nodes and the separate network of the business nodes operate. There are now thousands of them around the globe. But those two parts would form my question to you, if I understood you correctly. So I believe my time is up.
We have one more. We have time for one more.
You run the show, so.
No other questions? Oh, here he is. There we go. Pass that mic.
I was always curious about the now all health EHR system is auditable. After you implement this, blockchain in the healthcare system, was there any increase in malpractice sue or anything?
We haven't studied it in such a way. Again, my gut feeling tells the answer is yes, because at the time I was working in the ministry. Also, actually, even if a police wants to get access to your medical records, they have to go and ask for a permission. Doesn't mean that, well, they first have to justify what is the access they want to. And again, I saw the number of requests that came, and before that there is a period when individuals themselves can initiate that kind of investigation. So again, since I didn't see those numbers prior on the paper age, it's difficult for me to compare. But at least it made it very transparent. And what we saw, though, was that it at some point kind of the numbers peaked, but then it came down, because as said, everyone kind of learned very quickly through this feedback mechanism, because many of them were also discussed at the media, that you just do your job properly. The quality management processes inside the hospitals dramatically improved.
We have one more, Osama.
Small question. I think your platform allows the exchange of medical records between different hospitals. So what's the right of patients here? Do you have like opt-in model or opt-out?
Yeah.
What kind of, and even if you have these, what's the reaction of the citizens on these models?
Okay, so it's an opt-out model for health records within healthcare system. So as long as the health data is part of the kind of clinical workflow, the default is that the next doctor will see what the previous ones have been doing. Now, as I said, 0.6% of Estonian citizens at any given point of time have closed this access. And then if I would have time, it's very easy. It takes you like 30 seconds to close the data, or if you even during the visit with the doctor office, you can open it immediately. So it has been made very flexible. And that's also what supports the trust. Less than 1%, 0.6%. But services where the health data is being used outside, for instance, applying for social benefits, then part of the assessment is being made based on your medical data so that you don't have to run around all the doctors and bring your documents to another government department. Now at that moment, you're being asked, do you trust this government official to go on your behalf and access your medical files? Or if you say no, you can do all of it by yourself within a month and collect those medical files. Again, less than 1% of people would like to go through that hassle because first, it's much more convenient, and second, they can control later on which files that government official has been accessed on their behalf. There was one more. Oh. I don't know about the time.
Yeah, we can go. Go ahead. Just repeat his question.
Yeah.
You can repeat his question.
Sorry, I really, please, there is
one mic.
I really can't hear you.
Yeah.
It was working.
Yeah. So you said that you only store the cryptographic hash on chain.
Yeah.
But the rest of the healthcare data does not remain on the chain?
No.
Okay. So if you do that, then actually the actual data, that is the critical data, is being not served by the blockchain features and design because it's not stored on chain. So are you putting it in a kind of a central database?
No.
Okay, or you putting it back onto the chain in a different form?
No. I don't know what do you mean by blockchain features. So again, on top of this integrity layer, you can build several additional services. So you can build the provenance trail, or you can authorize access in a decentralized network according to certain principles. For instance, if my consent on my mobile phone is being, the hash of that consent is uploaded,
yes,
then whenever somebody asks this consent from my mobile phone, they can allow those independent providers to use that data. Only if this consent, which has the signature and verifies to the one in the blockchain, matches.
But the point I'm trying to raise here is that if the data is, if the entire data is not stored on the chain,
yeah,
and that data is corrupted, the hash would not match.
Yes.
Okay? So you get that integrity violation that the data has been tampered.
Yes.
But if somebody has changed the data from the actual source location, you cannot recover that data.
Yes, you can, because you can hash both versions, and you know at what time, with a frequency of 1 second, when, what, and who had changed. So you may have two copies, and you know that one is 5 minutes earlier than the other one. And that's exactly how we do it in Estonia. So you can present about my diagnosis 2 documents, but you can always verify where each of them came from. But I think our time is up. We can continue later on.
Yes. Thank you, Ian. Pleasure.